Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Hitting Bags and Stealing Balls. I'm your host, Matthew Fitzwater. Today is Friday, April 11th, and we have some exciting series to talk about today. And we will be covering the 7th through the 9th of April, as well as a couple games that took place on Thursday the 10th, because there were a couple 4-game series. But first, I just want to say thank you for tuning in, whether you're on YouTube or Spotify. I ask that you subscribe, that you like, comment, let me know some moments that you loved during the series. And just make sure to share, let your friends know, let's just grow this podcast, you guys. And I appreciate all the support. And, we're at 30 subscribers on YouTube. We're at about 35 followers on Spotify. And let's just keep that number going. I appreciate it greatly, you guys. And actually, I have some exciting news. So now I have figured out how to implement putting clips into my videos. So now we'll be able to, you'll be able to see some of the highlights with me. And we'll be able to, just check those out. And I'm very excited for that. It's to have clips in my videos now. It's going to be pretty great. So I'm excited for that. Also, I noticed in my last video that the video quality was lowered a little bit. I'm not sure why. I uploaded it the same way. I think maybe YouTube tried to speed up the uploading process by lowering the video quality. So I'm definitely going to make sure to watch that from now on, because the video quality can't be bad, okay? Because even though I do have some people that just listen on Spotify, if people are watching on YouTube, I don't want them to click on a video and the quality be bad. Because one, that's not a good way to retain people, to my channel. You're not going to subscribe if the quality's bad. But also, two, you're probably going to click off that video if the first 5 seconds looks like garbage. So definitely going to keep an eye on that. I'm sorry about that. And that's unacceptable. Again, we're going to move forward. And as we get farther down the road, I'm going to try to improve the overall experience. Like now I have clips in my videos. Now I have that thumbnail. And I'm going to try to do an intro, so stay tuned for that. And like I said, hopefully soon I'm going to be on Apple Podcasts. And I'm excited for that. They don't make it very easy, so I'm not sure how soon that'll be. But I just appreciate you guys greatly. And I definitely want to up the quality on these videos for you. So stay tuned for that and continue to enjoy what I'm uploading now. Hopefully you do enjoy and continue to enjoy that. So let's get started. The first series I want to talk about, Juan Soto and the New York Mets would look to continue their hot start as they host the Miami Marlins. And in Game 1, Kota Singa would throw 5 innings and only allow 1 run as the Mets would take Game 1 2-0. And the excitement wouldn't stop there as the Mets would cruise to a 10-5 victory in Game 2. But before the Mets could get out the brooms, Max Meyer would come back in Game 3 with 6 2/3 innings of shutout ball. And the Marlins would take Game 3 5-0. But I do have one question. Dane Meyer, how's that center field wall taste?
Last hope. Fly ball in the air, center field and deep. Myers is going back, still going back. He makes the catch! Oh my goodness, Dane Myers! He may have just won up Derek Hill to end the ball game! And he faced...
Yeah, folks. Yeah, that is one beautiful catch. And I'm glad he's okay, because he definitely tasted that wall. It was definitely hard to watch at first because you think he's going to, not get up. But after he got up, all smiles. That's what I love about baseball, man. I mean, when you see catches like that, it makes you want to go out there and make them. And just to be able to keep that momentum going, because he knows that he's coming up on that wall. So to be able to keep that momentum going and just, you're winning 5-0. 95% of guys would probably let that ball just drop. But hey, to end the game on a catch like that, it's beautiful. So well done out there in center field. Next up, the mediocre St. Louis Cardinals would travel to Pittsburgh to take on the mediocre Pirates. And the Pirates would start the series off with a smooth 8-4 victory. But in Game 2, Sonny Gray would outpitch Paul Skeens, and the Cardinals would win 5-3. But in Game 3, everybody would sleep right through it as it lasted 12 innings. And the Pittsburgh Pirates would win the series on a walk and take Game 3 2-1. And then Ohtani would take his World Series champion Dodgers to the White House to visit the president, and then right down the street to face the Washington Nationals in a 3-game series. And in Game 1, Ohtani would be a double shy of the cycle, but the Nationals would be waiting with a man named Mackenzie Gore as he throws 6 innings to lead them to a 6-4 victory over the Los Angeles Dodgers. Game 2 would have 2 starting pitchers that nobody's ever heard of, and the Nationals would get a dominant victory with an 8-2 win. But in Game 3, before they could get the sweep, the Dodgers would show off that beautiful bullpen that they have and would win a close one 6-5 to salvage the series. With the 4th series to talk about, the Cubs would welcome the Texas Rangers into Chicago with a 7-0 shutout before the Rangers would come back in Game 2 with 6 runs. Too bad the Cubs scored 10. But the Rangers would have the last laugh in Game 3 as Tyler Mahle would out-throw Shota Imanaga, and the Rangers would win 6-2. As the Cubs still take the series 2-1. And then Arizona would call for the Baltimore Orioles to come into town. And Baltimore would answer quickly with a 5-1 win over Zach Gallen. But after that, it would be all D-backs. They take the final games 4-3 and 9-0 behind a 6-inning scoreless outing by Brandon Pfaadt on Wednesday. The last place Mariners would go to battle with the Houston Astros in the park that prevents hits better than any pitcher ever could. And my point would get proven as the Astros get held to only 2 hits in Game 1 as the Seattle Mariners would score late to win 4-3. But in Game 2, they would have double the hits but only half the runs because baseball doesn't make any sense. But the Astros would take the lead in the 12th and close it out for a close 2-1 victory. And then in Game 3, Seattle would take the series. After getting shut down by Hunter Brown in the first 6 innings, they would absolutely destroy the bullpen for 7 runs in the final 2 innings of the game and win in walk-off fashion. The Mariners take Game 3 7-6 and win the series. Next, the Cincinnati Reds would travel to take on the first-place Giants, and the Reds would do the unthinkable. Their starting pitchers would lead them to a 2-0 and 1-0 victory in the first 2 games as Hunter Green in Game 1 gets 1 out away from a complete game shutout, and Nick Lodolo would throw 6 scoreless innings in Game 2. But in Game 3, San Francisco would salvage the series with a walk-off home run in the 10th inning to win 8-6. And then the red-hot Padres would travel 8 hours north. My gosh, California is way too big. To play the A's. And Tyler Soderstrom, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, I know that I am, would welcome them with a 2-homer game, but it would not be enough as the Padres get to Luis Severino and take Game 1 5-4. But on Tuesday, the A's would give that minor league park crowd something to cheer for as they absolutely go off with 13 hits and 10 runs, including 9 off of Dylan Cease in the first 3 innings, and they would win Game 2 10-4. But my God, the Padres would quickly diminish any momentum the A's gained that day by shutting them down in Game 3 and only allowing 2 hits and winning 2-1. Next up, the Yankees would travel to Detroit to take on the Tigers in a 3-game series, and the Tigers would greet them with a 6-2 loss in the first game and a 5-0 loss in the second game, fueled by reigning AL Cy Young winner Tariq Skubal as he would pitch 6 shutout innings. But in Game 3, the Yankees would come with a nice serving of fried rice as Ben Rice goes deep and Max Fried strikes out 11 over 7 innings. And the Yankees would salvage the series. What is the final AL East matchup? The Boston Red Sox would welcome George Springer and the Blue Jays into town with one question. Hey George, how does 4 hits and 3 RBIs sound? He thought it sounded great as the Blue Jays take Game 1, 6-2. And then Bo Bichette would follow Game 1 up with his best George Springer impression by getting 3 hits and 3 RBIs and leading them to another win, 6-2 in Game 2. But on Game 3, it would be all pitching as Kevin Gausman comes out with 8 innings of 1-run ball and 10 strikeouts against Tanner Houck, who would only go 6 but would also only allow 1 earned run. The Jays would still go on to take Game 3 in extras, 2-1. But thankfully for Boston fans, the Red Sox would prevent the 4-game sweep as they would win in the 10th and walk-off fashion after Andres Jimenez, who is the best fielder in baseball, would bobble the ball at second base and allow the winning run to score. Boston takes Game 4, 4-3. We'll get on the plane in Boston and head west as the Brew Crew would take on the Rockies, and I'm not talking about the mountains. Unfortunately for any fan of that Colorado baseball team, they would lose the first 2 games by a lot, losing 7-1 in Game 1 and then 17-2 in Game 2. As Jackson Chourio continues his great start to the season with a 5 RBI performance. But the Rockies would sleep better on Thursday night as Ryan Feltner would go 6 innings, only allowing 1 run, and Brenton Doyle in the leadoff spot would get 3 hits and 5 RBIs. And Colorado salvages a series with a 7-2 win in Game 3. Now we'll talk the final series that started on Monday as the Kansas City Royals would travel to the Minnesota Can't Gain Momentum Twins, and the Twins would prove my point as the Royals take Game 1, 4-2, and Game 2, 2-1. But the Twins would shut me up in Game 3 as Joe Ryan throws 7 scoreless innings and the Twins win 4-0. But the Royals would back me up in Game 4 and prove my point once again as the Twins lost any momentum that they got from Game 3, and the Royals would close out the 4-game series with a 3-2 victory on Thursday. Now, after their off day on Monday, the Los Angeles Angels would travel to Steinbrenner Field to play the Rays, and the Angels would take Game 1, 4-3, before the Rays would bounce back in Game 2 with a Jose Cabarello grand slam in the first inning to win 5-4. But Game 3 would be all Angels as Joe Adell, Taylor Ward, and the Mike Trout would all hit 2 home runs and crush the Rays 11-1 to take the series. And what would be the only sweep of these series recaps, the 4-6 Guardians would host the 2-8 White Sox. And before I continue, I'll give you 3 seconds to guess which team got swept here. Alright, good guess. You're correct. The White Sox. But unfortunately for any fan watching these games, it was quite the snooze fest. Game 1 went 0-0 into the bottom of the 9th before the Guardians finally walked it off with a very exciting walk. Fans would wake up on Wednesday and beg for a more entertaining game, and the baseball gods would not deliver. The Guardians win 3-2, and Emmanuel Clase gets his first save on the season, in scary fashion, shall I add. But finally, Stephen Kwan would come back in Game 3 and give that Cleveland crowd something to cheer about as he would go off. 4 for 5 with 4 RBIs as the Guardians would win 6-1 and sweep the Chicago White Sox. And now we have maybe the best matchup yet to end the recap, as one of my favorite rivalries in sports would kick off on Tuesday, as the Philadelphia Phillies would travel to Atlanta to take on the Braves with an elite pitching matchup in Game 1 as the top 2 NL Cy Young voters from a year ago would face off, Chris Sale versus Zach Wheeler. And they both give up 5 runs and disappoint the crowd But luckily for Atlanta fans, their bullpen would outshine Philadelphia's, and the Braves would go on to take Game 1 7-5. And in Game 2, that same bullpen would give up the lead in the ninth, and the Phillies would take Game 2 4-3. Now finally, the final game we have to talk about this week would be led by future potential aces, as Jesus Luzardo and Spencer Schwellenbach would go 6 innings and only allow 1 run each, but the Braves would get the last laugh thanks to 1 swing.
In there! Deep left center! The biggest of flies for the Big Bear! And a game that started on April.
Marcell Ozuna with the beautiful walk-off home run to give his Braves the 4-2 victory. And my gosh, is he just a brilliant DH. Go look at that man's stat page. I mean, he loves being DH. He loves it. I mean, a lot of guys, they can struggle with that, responsibility, sitting on the bench, coming in, big moments, not being in the momentum of the game. But just day in and day out, Marcell Ozuna is going to show up for that team. And he is definitely a force to be reckoned with, and I would not want to pitch to him when the game's on the line like that, and he showed exactly why. So, good job for Marcell Ozuna. Now, we're going to talk standings as of Friday, April 11th, but we're not going to end with standings. So, I'm actually going to do something different. So, now that I can show clips, I'm going to show one highlight that I thought was probably my favorite moment of the series recap. And it's not going to be, obviously, one of the videos I already showed. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you, maybe 2 or 3 pitching matchups that I think people should keep an eye on going into the next series. Just so you can kind of, if you're looking at the games coming up and you kind of want to see one to pay attention to, I'm going to give you one. So, or 2, just depends on how I feel. It's my show, guys. Come on now. But yeah, so let's talk standings. We'll go ahead. We'll start in the AL East. In first place, we have the New York Yankees and the Toronto Blue Jays tied, as the Yankees are 7-5 and the Blue Jays are 8-6. In third place, we have the Boston Red Sox sitting at 7-7. The Rays would be next at 5-7. And then the Baltimore Orioles, who are disappointing so far this season, sit in last place at 5-8. Now for what is probably going to be the closest division all year in baseball, as it always is, the American League Central. And right now, we've got 3 teams at the top that are all right there. The Detroit Tigers sit atop at 7-5. The Kansas City Royals sit second at 7-6. And the Guardians sit at third at 6-6, with the Minnesota Twins falling back at 4-9. And of course, the Chicago White Sox in last at 2-10. And then to close out the American League, we have the West, with the Texas Rangers taking first place at 9-4. And then the LA Angels sitting in second with a pretty lead over third place at 8-4. And then 3 games behind the Angels, we have the Houston Astros at 5-7. And then the A's and the Mariners are tied in last at 5-8. And now we'll move to the National League, where the better teams are just better. And we'll start in the East, as the New York Mets and the Philadelphia Phillies sit tied atop the National League East at 8-4, with the Marlins in third at 6-6, followed by the Nationals at 5-7. And my gosh, the Atlanta Braves are in last place at 3-9. Next up is the most disappointing division in baseball every single year, as we move to the Central. The Chicago Cubs sit atop the National League Central at 9-6, followed by the 7-6 Milwaukee Brewers. And then in third, we have the St. Louis Cardinals at 5-7, followed by the 5-8 Pirates and the 5-8 Reds, tied in last place. And to finish out the standings, we have the National League West with 3 loaded teams right at the top. The San Diego Padres are off to a 10-3 start, and the 9-3 Giants and the 10-4 Dodgers sit only half a game back. But after that, we go to the 7-6 Arizona Diamondbacks and then the 3-9 Colorado Rockies. And that is it for the standings as of Friday, April 11th. Now, I will give you one more highlight that is my favorite moment from this past series recap. And we go back to New York as Dane Myers isn't the only Miami Marlin in the outfield that likes to lay out for his catches. Let's take a look.
1-2 with the bases loaded to Taylor from Henriquez, and he flies it in the air to left center field and deep, really deep. Hill dives! Whoa! That's one of the best catches you'll ever see, and he made.
Somebody find out what they are feeding those outfielders. My gosh, Miami. I guess if you aren't going to win games, you might as well wow us with your fielding. I love it. I love it. I'm looking forward to many more highlights like that, hopefully, because my gosh, them guys are putting their bodies on the line. Now, to end the episode, we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at 2 upcoming matchups that I want you guys to keep an eye on this weekend. The first one takes place tonight in just a couple hours as the Cubs will travel to LA to take on the Dodgers. And representing the Chicago Cubs will be Matthew Boyd, who has thrown 11 innings this season and not allowed a run. And he will be going toe-to-toe with Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who has thrown 16 innings and allowed just 3 runs. And for the second matchup to look out for, we go to Sunday, as the New York Mets travel to face the A's, as Kota Singa will take on former Met Luis Severino. My gosh, you guys need to keep an eye on that matchup for sure. That one is going to be beautiful. I'd love to see how Severino does against his former team, how Singa does in that hitter's park. That's going to be a good matchup. But, as you know, we'll be back Monday to recap it all. And thank you guys for tuning in. I'm very excited for where this podcast is headed going forward. And again, just like, comment, subscribe, share, get me out there. I thank you guys all so much, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned.